Hello, everyone. So here's part two of our breakdown of the readings from the textbook for today. So this is the second source that you have the possibility of utilizing in the research paragraph that you're writing. So we're going to place it in conversation with the Obama source. This is by James Surowiecki. It's called The Mobility Myth. So we're going to begin looking at the source in the same way that we did with the Obama one, which is to think about what is the perspective that the source has, right? It's really important to note that there's some overlap between him and Obama, but there's some things that are distinct. And so my question, what exactly is his perspective on American mobility? We're going to complete the statement. James Surowiecki, and it doesn't say this in the article, but I did some research on him. Again, a big thing about finding out the validity of your source. So he's a financial reporter and an American history analyst, right? So I begin my statement. He argues that the concept of upward mobility, how might I complete it? Again, I wish one of you could answer the question here, but I'll just do it myself, right? He argues that the concept of upward mobility is not something that is new as far as its decrease, right? So to simplify that a little bit, he's saying he doesn't agree exactly with what Obama's saying, that it's become a really big issue and things have shifted. He's saying it never was as big of a deal as we like to make it. We've liked to put out this vision that American society has all of these rags to riches possibilities, but it's always been a small percentage of the population that could actually rise from poverty into wealth. So he's rather pessimistic about just this concept in general. What does he mean when he writes that Americans are less concerned than Europeans about inequality and more confident that society is meritocratic? Well, one thing that I think is really important about this concept is that it ties him to Obama, right? And I had a similar question about Obama, which is why is it that Americans don't focus so much on this concept? If there is so much social inequality, why don't we care so much about it, right? And so an interesting thing that Surowiecki does is he more directly places America in conversation with other cultures. So on 345, he's talking about this, and he's basically saying that we live in a society that likes to have this vision of merit, which is the American dream. If you work hard enough, you're going to get rewarded with wealth. And so he's saying this is why we're not so concerned about a lack of mobility at any particular moment, because we say, okay, this person might be struggling right now, but he or she works hard, there's going to be success, right? So we've never really freaked out too much about poverty because we've always said you have the opportunity to make things greater, right? And so this is something that joins him with Obama. They both think that there's some damage in this American dream rags to riches concept because it makes us so optimistic when someone's in poverty that we don't think enough about how to resolve that poverty. And we always like to say, well, this person's going to figure it out on his own or her own, because all of our stories kind of capture that. But the whole point that both of these guys are discussing is that it's not realistic. So the third question here, what does he mean when he writes that we shouldn't delude ourselves into thinking that more social mobility will cure what ails the U.S. economy? So this is from 346, and it's really talking about, as he explains later on at the bottom of that section in the end of the article, that the way to solve income inequality is not to think more about social mobility. It's not to think more about how to make everyone rich, because we need to be realistic and understand that's never going to happen. What we need to think about is how the lower and middle classes are suffering, and we need to find a way to just make things more comfortable for those people. So this is from the last paragraph there on 346 at the very top. It begins with this quote and then continues a little bit. He says, more important, in any capitalist society, most people are bound to be part of the middle and working classes. Public policy should focus on raising their standard of living instead of raising their chances of getting rich. So, this is a really big thing, right? That he says there's a way to deal with this. It's not to keep up this really unrealistic American dream idea of everyone getting rich. It's more about thinking about how to make people who are currently uncomfortable comfortable. Not how to make them rich, but how to make their lives a little bit more satisfying. Okay, so now that we've talked about both of these articles, a big thing to keep in mind is source distinction, right? I've asked you guys in the paragraph prompt for this assignment that's coming up to use either one or both of these sources. So my note here, if we were looking at these sources as possibilities for a paper on the impact of social inequality, what could I gain from each? So something Obama provides is personal experience, right? He's really big on this just as a speaker and a cultural analyst in general, is tying in his own life story, right? So that could be something to utilize. He also talks about these really important and interesting historical, cultural shifts that I could use as support as well. So those are the two big things he's giving me. Surowiecki is giving this interesting comparison contrast of various cultures, right? Mostly talking about US versus UK. And he provides some really useful statistics. So my note here, just in breaking down what each source provides, is to be sure that as you collect sources for the paper, each one provides you with something distinct, right? So now that we've talked through these, I want you guys to go into doing your social inequality paragraph, and let me bring that prompt up and just kind of explain it a little bit. So I put this in the email I sent to you. It's also on courses and here on the website. So I said, write one full research paragraph, 250 words max, that uses points from either one or both of the articles from today's lesson. The paragraph should begin with a completion of the following topic sentence, and then interpret it along with A, at least 2 quotes from the textbook articles, and B, a specific pop culture example. So you're beginning with this statement: one of the most important impacts of social inequality in America is. You decide. So we talked about how Obama lists many, right? About the polarization of society, about the impact on the family. You decide one that interests you. And I just want to see that you're using one or both of these articles as a source, and then you're bringing in a pop culture example. It can be an advertisement, it can be a social media post, it can be a celebrity story, a point from a film, anything like we talked about in class. So use the information we've discussed here from these 2 articles, and you should be taking, I would say now, maybe close to an hour, something like that, to work on writing a paragraph that fulfills this. And again, this is just practice as you're heading into the writing of your own paper in the coming weeks, right? So obviously none of you guys are writing on this topic. This is just a way to think about writing analysis that has a social impact focus. So enjoy, and I look forward to reading those. I will talk to you guys in the next video about the upcoming homework assignment, which will be the proposal. So, to be continued.